I'm John Hancock of the West Plains Water Coalition. This is Water Watch. Our West Plains is part of District Number 5 on the Spokane County Commission. Mr. Al French is our representative. Prior to his election in 2011, Al served from 2002 to 2009 on the Spokane City Council.
John asked me to talk a little bit about the proposal that I've come forward with to try and bring clean drinking water back to the West Plains. This has been an evolution of activities that actually started probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, and I got Albert Tripp here with Airway Heights, and part of this conversation actually started with him when he called me and said, hey, we have a grant to drill a well, but we don't have any water rights. Does the county have any water rights? And I scoured the county for water rights, and we didn't, but discovered in that process that our wastewater treatment facility in the valley processes 8 million gallons of water a day, and when we process it, technically the county owns it. We put that water back into the river, we recharge the river, goes down and then out of the county. So the question was, I've got 8 million gallons in the valley, I need water on the West Plains. How do I convey that water from point A to point B? And so we started the process of trying to identify, is there a way to where we can transfer that water up to the West Plains, and then through the Air Force and the grants, we have the ability and the funding to put a new well down right behind Fort George Wright College, where the Air Force, Fairchild, already has several wells down there now, and pipes that bring it up to 21st, then down 21st into Fairchild Air Force Base. They're going to be doing repairs on that line, and the conversation was, well, as long as you're going to be digging it up anyway, why don't we bury a new line in there to deal with West Plains and the city of Airway Heights and as many folks as we can up here to get good, clean drinking water. As it turns out, we actually have an individual that just retired from the Air Force. I'm looking for him in the audience. I talked to him. There he is, that actually was involved in those wells and that pipeline. So he's a wealth of information in terms of, is this doable? Yeah, it is. And is the Air Force going to be repairing those water lines? Yes, they are. And so the question is, how do I communicate or transfer that water from the valley here to the West Plains? So we did meet with the Department of Ecology, and part of that meeting was a suggestion that we pursue getting what's called a trust agreement. And our initial meetings were with the tribes. We've met with both the Kalispell and the Spokane tribe, but since then we've actually got 2 other entities that might be able to enter in that trust agreement with us. And so the tribe's going through their process. They're very deliberative about how they do that. And if we can enter into the trust agreement with the tribe, then we have the mechanism to put the water in the river, transfer it down to Fort George Wright, pump it out, and get it back on the West Plains. And it tests clean, so we can get good, clean drinking water back on the West Plains. So the question then is, can you get that water to everybody? And this is a challenge that we've been wrestling with, especially for the folks that lie on the very outlying areas where there's a lot of basalt to try and get through. So we're still working through that. It would be my personal goal to try and get good, clean drinking water to everybody on the West Plains, whether you're inside the city of Airway Heights or adjacent to Airway Heights or wherever you're located at. Now, we did have a meeting at the Palisades neighborhood here several weeks ago, and several of the folks in the audience said, well, if you could get filters on our wells and buy time through the filters, we'd be willing to do that. So we did pass out a slip, and we had a number of people sign up for that program. And I have met with a couple of state legislators about getting a grant to pay for those filtration systems on your well. We understand that that can be an expensive proposition, be anywhere from $40,000 to $50,000 per filtration system, and that's on the well. That's not at the sink. That's not at the point of that the water line comes into the house, but that's at the well. So for those that you signed up, we will be reaching out to you because we need to know the size of your well and line so that we can get that priced, and then we will have a grant application with the state legislature to get it paid for. I need to know the universe of folks that are willing to have the wells, filtration systems, and if you want to be part of that, please let us know so that we can put you on the list. We can get it priced and we can make a grant application to cover all of it. So that's where we're at. Then the one other thing that came up in the meeting a couple weeks ago was, well, we'd like to be able to have a conversation with our federal delegation. And, you know, I've mentioned a number of times that I've been working with and in regular conversation with both Senator Cantwell, Senator Murray, and Congresswoman McMorris Rodgers. Was back in D.C. as recently as in April. So I did have a conversation last week with both Senator Murray's and Cantwell's office, and they said yes, they'd be willing to have a meeting. So the structure of the meeting is going to be more than likely a Zoom. I don't know that I can get them in town, but more than likely a Zoom. They've said that they'd like to have 5 people there, and I've reached out to John and asked for 2 of them to be from the coalition. And we'll reach out to the neighborhood, have 2 from the neighborhood, and then I also reached out to Chad and asked him to be part of that. And then the other thing that they requested was that we submit the questions that we want to ask and get answered in writing. How do we solve this problem? None of us wanted to be here. All of us are the victims of this, some more than others, I acknowledge that. But what's the path forward look like? And so that's why I've engaged the majority of my involvement with this issue in terms of trying to find a solution, trying to get clean water back onto the West Plains. Ecology has, if you haven't seen it, Ecology has a great book that they have on the aquifer, the Spokane-Rather Prairie aquifer. Very, very educational and stuff. And so these are just a couple slides out of that, and also to show that when you get down to the point where the wells are for Fairchild Air Force Base, there's 585 million gallons a day. Going past that point, we're looking for 8 million gallons. There's plenty of water to be able to service that.
We all certainly are appreciative of all efforts that can be made to figure out all of the complex solutions that are going to go into solving the problem. And though I know that you certainly don't want us to be reliving any history, we don't want to relive history. Mm-hmm. It's been ugly. But one really burning question really would help us understand how we got here. And you are uniquely positioned, more than anybody I can determine anyway, to help us really understand how we got here, specifically to the airport side of our problem. Serving on the airport board as a county commissioner, on the health board, you've watched this unfold for a few years. And we all have come to understand, finally, through public records requests, we finally have figured out that the airport knew it had this PFAS problem in 2017. In the meantime, there has been absolute silence practiced by the airport. That means management and board level. We would like to know, because the question is asked, but it's never been answered yet. Will you please help us understand what guided keeping a lid on this information, keeping it from the public, keeping it from the downstream well owners? You are uniquely positioned. You are there in the room. what are the reasons? There are probably more than one reason. Can you give us a real definitive, why did the airport and your colleagues feel it necessary to keep this from us until we actually finally had to pull it out of the airport and find that information out finally and turn it over to ecology? And then only it is surfaced to what we have now. What happened where we could have utilized this process and have it begun 5, 6 years ago and have a whole bunch of remediation underway by now? But why did you keep it under wraps for so long?
So so over the last 7 years, this has been an evolving topic, and we've learned a lot from the science and from a variety of different sources. So to answer that question, I now have staff that's going back through the last 7 years of my activity at the county and involvement with the airport as well as others. And so we are going to be coming forward with a record with documents to back it up so that we can answer that question. Because quite honestly, I don't remember everything that happened 7 years ago, but we do have records that can identify that, and we're going to make it public so that you will know everything that I knew at the time. And again, I'm one person on an airport board of 7, and the airport is located in the city. There were 3 other elected officials that had the same information that I did and also had not come forward. And there's reasons for that. And so we will provide that for you.
And what are those reasons that it has to go to this big investigative process that's inside your own office?
And there's legal reasons for that I cannot speak to at this point, and I'm working to try and get the freedom to be able to talk about those.
Okay, I'll bring up one right now and I'll finish. Our investigation shows that the primary reason that you have kept a lid on this is financial. It has to do with all the wonderful big money deals going on in property development around the airport. And you didn't want any bad news to screw up those deals and devalue the property. You have played to your constituents and those who fund your campaigns rather than consideration for the downstream people, knowing full well for years you're basically sending pollution to our wells.
Well, you're certainly entitled to your opinion. I think what you'll find is the record doesn't support that. And so we'll be coming forward, and you know, you're all entitled to an opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts, and we'll be coming forward with the facts. And so I think I've hit my 3 questions.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
For the West Plains Water Coalition, I'm John Hancock.